Without further ado, let me introduce our speaker today, Mr. Gurpardeep Singh. Mr. Gurpardeep is the Chief Operating Officer of APID Education Group. He is the Chairman of the National Level Secretarial Training Committee, STC, for the education sector under the Human Resources Development Fund, HRDF, under the Ministry of Human Resources, Malaysia. He has more than 30 years experience in both the ICT and higher education industries as a developer, project manager, technology manager, and educator. And he has also graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Computer Science from University of Technology Malaysia in 1988, and a Master of Science degree in Technology Management from Staffordshire University, UK. So I'll pass the floor to Mr. Gurpardeep Singh to share his insights and knowledge.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Meharvan. And thank you very much to BIMBING for inviting me to join you in this session. I hope everybody out there is having a good, had a good lunch already and is having a good Saturday. Nice to see some of my former students on the list of participants as well. I can see Manvir and I can see Pritipal as well. Good to see you. Good to see you guys, and hope you're keeping safe. So what I'll do is I have about 20 minutes, I think, and I will just very quickly run through a quick presentation that I have. The theme that I have chosen to talk about is basically, let me just share my screen first. You know, okay, if you can see my screen. Okay, so my focus here is on future proofing, and I think I want to focus more on the future world of work. And I think that as we go through our thought processes of deciding what we want to study, or we may already be studying, I think our thoughts are always what's going to happen in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years in the future. And as you know, the future is a rapidly changing one. So I think we need to try to understand better how we can prepare ourselves so that whichever field of study we are in, how we can prepare ourselves so that we'll be so-called future-proof. Yeah, today the whole world is talking about future-proofing ourselves and being able to ensure that we can succeed continue to succeed no matter what we decide to do in our future. Yeah, so that's where my focus will be. Maybe I'll just start off by asking a very quick question. If there's, I'm frequently asked by people, what is that, if you were to describe the future, what's that one word that describes it the best? Yeah, and people say technology, people say amazing, uncertain, scary, and so on and so forth. But I think, in my opinion, if there's one word that best describes the future, it is actually disruption. The future is a highly, highly, highly disrupted future. And disruption, I think when people look at it, they always have a negative connotation. It's not meant to be negative. It just means that you're going against the grain of where the technology or where businesses normally flow, and there's always something that comes along that changes the whole direction of things. And I think some examples might be useful here. We all are familiar with innovation, and I think we've in this country in particular, we've been talking about transforming our economy into an innovation-based economy for the last 30 years. Innovation is essentially, if you want to break it down to very simple, crude manner in description, it's actually doing the same things, but doing these things a bit better. So improving the way you do the same things, achieving the same thing, but achieving it slightly better every time. So you innovate and you innovate and you innovate. Disruption, on the other hand, is telling yourselves, hey, look, doing the same things doesn't work anymore, doesn't apply anymore. We've got to do something radically different. So making the old things obsolete. And we've seen a very, very simple examples of innovation versus disruption in our lives, and we all use these things every day. I mean, on the left-hand side, you can look at the radio cab. That was the first innovation when people wanted to book taxis those days. Yeah, so instead of going out into the road and hailing a taxi, you actually take a now about 20 years ago, you could actually call a cab and the cab will come to your house. Of course, you pay a little bit more, but people were willing to get involved in such innovation. So that's a form of innovation that slowly moved into online booking of cabs and all that. But the fundamental outcome was the same. You're still taking a taxi. You're still dependent on a taxi driver. You're still depending on someone bringing a taxi to your home. And you're at the mercy of the taxi driver. You don't even know who the taxi driver is. You don't even know the condition of the taxi, and so on and so forth. So then people sat down and thought to themselves, why do we need taxis? Every one of us can be a taxi driver. Every one of us who has a car and the car is available and it's in good condition can become a taxi driver, and that's where Uber and Grab came about. That's a form of disruption because that's totally disrupted the taxi industry and the transport industry. Yeah, so now everybody can become a taxi driver, and people are making sort of alternative careers out of this. Yeah, so that's one very simple example of disruption. We've seen that also in the hotel industry, where in the maybe 15-20 years ago, you want to go and stay somewhere, you go to a particular hotel and book hotels from their website. That in itself is an innovation. And then slowly it became common to have a number of hotels grouped under common sites like Expedia and Agoda and all that, and you could actually tell that site where you wanted to go in, and will actually select a hotel for you. That's another form of innovation. But then people then sat down and said, hey, why do we need hotels? Why do you need to depend on hotels? Every one of us has got an apartment or a room that's available, or a house that we want to let out on a daily rate basis, which we never used to think of before. And there you have it, Airbnb came about, and that's totally disrupted the hotel industry. And we've seen other examples, cinemas and all, and so on and so forth. So I think the whole message here is that as we go further, as we go towards the future, these types of disruption are going to be a way of life. The old way of doing things, the old things that we used to do will no longer apply. Yeah, and we'll talk about why that's the case. Yeah, this is another example. I love this example because it starkly shows how the work at the top. 11 years ago, if you wanted to take a video from the top from the top, you will actually hire a helicopter and get a cameraman who's brave enough to sit on the edge of that helicopter and carry a heavy camera on his shoulder, risking his life, and take an aerial shot. Today, you don't need to. So because of the technology that's available, you just buy a drone or hire a drone and just send it up to the sky, and you have fantastic videos that you can use. Yeah, so this has totally disrupted the industry at the top. Yeah, total disruption. Yeah, and I think if we reflect, our lives have revolved around this disruption, and I think particularly over the last 1.5 years or so, when we've been in this pandemic, if you're a person of if you're a youth, maybe below 20 or even 20 plus, this has been our world over the last 1.5 years, isn't it? Our world is surrounded by technologies that have enabled us to survive the pandemic and to exist in a highly disrupted environment by having everything that we need at home without having to step out of the home. So you needed to be entertained, Netflix, Amazon, other streaming services, Spotify for music. We communicate with people through all forms of social media platforms. We were able to get information from Google, Tumblr, YouTube, and so on and so forth. We were able to use devices, all sorts of devices, to do what we wanted to do, could buy things while sitting at home, and could share information and also learn at home as well. So this was our universe, or this is our universe today, which has been enabled by technology. And this is a highly disrupted existence. Fair to say that if this pandemic had happened 15 or 20 years ago, we wouldn't have survived. But we are able to survive now. We are able to survive a highly disrupted environment or situation because we have this technology surrounding us. Yeah, and it's only going to get more and more intense. Yeah, so most of the disruption that we see today is driven and enabled by technology. It's been made possible because of technology, and hence normally it comes together. That's why when people talk about disruption, they always tag the term digital next to it. So it's digital disruption. So whenever we, for the future purposes, whenever we talk about disruption, we always talk about digital disruption. Yeah, disruption that is supported by technology, digital technology. Then alongside that, you have this whole thing about Industry 4.0, which everybody seems to be talking about. Again, that's happening alongside, or that is part of this whole process. And this is 7 years ago, this German scientist, Klaus Schwab, who came up with this idea that we are now entering the 4th industrial revolution. Now, that was 7 years ago. And basically what he said is, I think we're all familiar with this, but if you're not, you can Google it and there'll be enough information out there to understand. But what he said is the world has gone through 3 stages of evolution in terms of how we have developed, in terms of how technology has developed. And the biggest development was the computer age, Industry 3.0, which started after World War II, and where we really saw an explosion in the use of IT and ICT and computing technology and innovation. Yeah, But he said that at that time that we are entering a new phase, and it's called Industry 4.0, where there'll be a blurring of the lines between the physical system where we operate and the cyber system where computer systems operate and networks operate and things like that. So bringing the two worlds basically colliding and basically converging together. That's where the term cyber physicals came about. So we are now in Industry 4.0. Now, this is not to say that 20 years ago people were talking about Industry 1.0, 2.0. These are ideas that have just come about. Yeah. So this is happening alongside this idea of disruption, and some of the disruptive technologies or technologies that are driving this disruption, things that we hear about quite commonplace today. Yeah, robotics, big data, augmented reality, additive manufacturing, cloud computing, cybersecurity, IoT, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so these are the technologies that are rapidly developing, that are rapidly maturing, that is enabling disruption across all industries. So disruption is not confined to technology industries, actually works across all industries. Yeah. IoT, for example, the Internet of Things, is basically the principle of having interconnected devices, billions and billions of devices connected, and you've seen an explosion in the number of devices that are interconnected. 2020 estimated 50.1 billion devices. I think in each of our homes, we would have at least 5 or 6 devices that are connected in some way to the network. And each of these devices is talking to the network and exchanging data with some system and interacting with some system somewhere, and generating a lot of data. And something has to be done with that data, and that's where big data comes in. Yeah. So today we are talking about a scale of data which goes beyond what we are traditionally familiar with. Yeah, terabytes. We are talking about now petabytes of data, exabytes, zettabytes, and in the future job byte as well, with 30 zeros in front of it. So it's an explosion of data, and that's why data science and data analytics has come to the fore. Yeah, I think after this session you'll have a couple of very capable young professionals who are in the data science areas who will be talking about it. So I think you'll find out more about the data science sector there. But the other technology that's been really taking off is AI. Now, it's not to say that it's new technology. It's been around for years. It's just that AI has traditionally been within the domain of research in the past. It's been less accessible because of the computing power that you needed, and because of the sort of tools that are involved in it were very confined to people who were very much directly involved in computer science, and it was just within that domain. But today AI cuts across all industries. It's become more accessible because of cloud computing. You can access AI libraries and AI APIs, and you can embed them into your applications. You can drive applications across all industries. So one is what some people say, that the next wave of development, in fact, Industry 5.0 is probably going to be all about AI. Yeah. And how machines are going to take over repetitive tasks that human beings may be less efficient with, and allow the human beings to focus on other things that require more thinking. Yeah, so watch this space. I think AI is an area that is already disrupting a lot of areas, a lot of sectors, but it will continue to disrupt that in the future. Yeah. Robotics, of course, I think now we are starting to see robotics appearing here and there. We will see this more intensify further in the next few years, and having devices help us to do things that we generally, as human beings, are less inclined to do. Yeah. And of course, alongside that, there's also development in the networks, and we've heard of 5G. I think there is all over the world, people are talking about rolling out 5G networks beyond what we are currently familiar with. This is 4G, and 5G provides you with the type of performance, with the type of bandwidth, with the low latency, low delay that enables tremendous amount of data to be transferred within the shortest possible time. It enables almost real-time exchange of data. So all that is to support the other developments that we spoke about earlier. And when you have this tremendous amounts of data flowing across all sorts of networks, then you also create other problems. For example, security issues. So when there's so much data being shared on all sorts of networks, then cybersecurity becomes important. So that in itself is an industry, cybersecurity, and that has become even more important today than it was before. And again, I'm quite pleased to see one of my former students who will be speaking after this, and he's a He's involved in cybersecurity, and I think if you'd like to find out more about cybersecurity as a career option, he'll be able to share that with you. But this is a big industry, yeah. It's a very, very major area because estimations are security breaches cost about 600 billion a year globally, and there are many issues as to there are many continuously new breaches that keep being identified, yeah, and coming up. However, jobs of the future, yeah, and this is what we want to focus on. I want to draw your attention to the research that is done by an organization called the World Economic Forum. It's a global collection of thinkers, of thought leaders, scientists, businessmen, economists, and what they do every year is they carry out research by polling or running questionnaires with thousands and thousands of companies across the world and practitioners around the world. And this is their latest report that they published in 2020, December 2020, in fact. And they asked companies basically, hey, look, beyond this pandemic, what are your priorities? What are you going to focus on to ensure that you're going to come out of this pandemic in a better shape, yeah, and be able to survive? And the top two areas, if you can see at the top there, most of these organizations said, and this is global, yeah, they said, number one, we want to accelerate the digitalization of our work processes. So digitalization is going to become a key priority, or it is already a key priority. Second one is provide more opportunities to work remotely. So people are going to be encouraged to work from home, as it's already been happening today, and accelerate automation of tasks. So what this is trying to say is that companies are now looking to the future and they say, look, we've got to now digitalize, we've got to now disrupt, we've now got to ensure that our businesses can survive in a highly disrupted world of the future. Technology is the answer. And this is, again, World Economic Forum's research. And then they were asked, what are the jobs that are going to be increasing in demand and what's going to be reducing in demand. On the left-hand side, you can see the new job titles of the future. They're already here: data scientists, data analysts, AI and machine language specialists, big data specialists, digital marketing and strategy specialists, and so on and so forth. Now, these titles might look very technology focused, but they're not necessarily technology professionals. Yeah, they are people across all sectors who carry out these types of work, but who have expertise in their own domain. They could be accountants, they could be lawyers, they could be engineers, but because of their keen ability to integrate technology into their work, they perform this work. That's the sort of jobs that the World Economic Forum is predicting are going to grow in the future. Whereas on the right-hand side, you can see things like data entry clerks, admin executives and secretaries, accounting clerks, accountants and auditors. These are basically traditional roles. And essentially what the key message here is that traditional, predictable, and routine jobs will disappear. And new jobs that require greater innovation, human interaction, and deep analytical skills will replace them. On the left, across all sectors, yeah? Good news is there are more jobs being created than jobs disappearing. So, young people who are entering the education scene or entering the work scene today, you're in a good space, yeah? So not to worry. But closer to home, what's happening in Malaysia? Malaysia is having the same scenario. 85% of companies, and this is a survey from MDEC, this is recent, it was published in May or June 2021, and they've said that 85% of companies in Malaysia are facing critical digital talent issues. So there is a scarcity of digital talent. They can't find them. Yeah, so 43% of the companies are looking at hiring from overseas. And if you look at the bottom, the graph there, total number of digital jobs, it's grown during the pandemic. Yeah, this is probably one of the only sectors, apart from healthcare, where numbers have grown in terms of jobs, yeah, where job creation has been so active over the last 1.5 years or so, yeah. So from June 20 till now, till March 2021, jobs have grown from 19,000 to 52,000. It's just not enough, yeah. And people are clamoring for such people. And the industries that are hiring, financial services, banking, insurance, IT services, computer software, internet companies, and so on and so forth. So it works across the board, yeah, across all sectors. And these are some of the job titles that are fastest growing in Malaysia. It's in line with the World Economic Forum's report that I showed you earlier, yeah. So how do you get there? Again, it goes down to education. It goes down to preparing yourself. And I don't want to go into those details, but you have, you know the routes. You finish your school, you're going through either a diploma or pre-university degree, and then move into a degree and get into employment or postgraduate studies. What sort of degrees do you do? You can do all sorts of degrees, of course, obviously IT and computer science and software engineering, computer games, but you can also do a degree in accounting and finance, business, marketing, and still be part of this, because what is important is you go through these degrees, but you ensure that you embed technology within what you study, so that you can see where technology can improve the way, or technology can create new models for you to operate when you start working. Yeah, so any degree, I think it doesn't matter. Yeah, but what is important is that you have a strong embedment of technology within what you study. And I mean, but that alone is not enough. And I think we'll appreciate that employers look for more than just technology, not more than just knowledge. And if you talk to employers, this is a survey done by JobStreet about 3 years ago. And this is what employers talk about. Yeah, they look for attitude, they look for character, they look for communication skills. That hasn't changed. So as technology proficient as you are, it won't be of any good if this is not there. Yeah, so whatever you do, you need to make sure that you develop yourself in these areas. Yeah, the so-called soft skills. And at the end of the day, if you want to look at a jigsaw puzzle or what's important, these are the important factors that employers are looking for. The yellow part at the bottom is the most important today: adaptability, being able to continuously learn new skills, develop new ways of thinking, and that will enable you to future-proof yourself in your future. Yeah. So what's important for you is not just the course, but you also have to look at the environment that you study in, the people you study with and that you study from, and ensuring that your studies actually gives you a transformative experience. You must be a different person when you graduate than you were when you started. Yeah. And look at all these factors when you are choosing a possible place to study or program to study. So are you prepared for a disruptive world? You should be, because that's the way of the future. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to cover. A very quick overview of future-proofing ourselves for the future. And like I said, you've got speakers coming along after this who are experts in their own fields, and it's very, very important, very useful that we're able to engage with them and to find out more about careers in their areas. Yeah. So thank you very much for listening. If there are any questions, I will be very happy to address them and in this session. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So Mr. Gurpardeep, we have a few questions here.
Yeah.
One question is, I've worked in the restaurant and delivery business.
Yep.
I want to upskill myself to join the tech industry.
Right.
What viable options exist for someone with little education and financial means in Malaysia to access this education and workforce that won't create a financial burden on the outset for me?
Fantastic question. You know, the government today is pretty desperately trying to reskill people. During this time, the government is pouring billions of ringgit into providing reskilling and upskilling programs for people from all sectors, including the restaurant industry. Yeah. And especially the restaurant industry, because they're trying to tell people, look, now you've got to move into a different line of thinking. Yeah. You may be still involved in food and business, but less food and beverage, but let's try to see how technology can support you. So you can go to Percaso. Percaso is the social security organization in Malaysia. You go to their website. You can go to the Human Resource Development Corporation website. You can even go to the Ministry of Higher Education website, and there's a lot of upskilling programs which are fully funded by the government. You don't have to pay anything. And a lot of them, and this is very important, a lot of them are actually what they call train and place programs, which means that after you get trained, you also get placed into an organization. These are fantastic opportunities. So do take advantage of this. And sometimes I feel a bit sad that we get a lot of people who want to do this, but I don't see too many people from our community getting involved in this upskilling opportunity. So do take advantage. If you need any information, you can contact me. I can put you in the right direction. Yeah, very important.
Okay, there's another question asked that all these disruptions and big tech and AI seem to function on data source from users in an unethical and irresponsible manner. Are there methods to source data that exist that does not make use of users but empower them as well?
Oh yeah, of course, definitely. I think Manbir will talk more about it later, because I think he's involved very much in the data security governance and all that. Yeah, which is very important. Yeah, I mean, whatever it is, that we are still bound by privacy laws, and there's such a thing as the PDPA acts and ethical use of data. So all that must be in place. But at the end of the day, we are all consumers and we are all producers of data. And I think it can only benefit us if we are able to share more and more, and we are able to consume more data. Yeah. So yes, I think, but don't be. I mean, we shouldn't look at it as something negative. We shouldn't look at being very scared about sharing our, I mean, look, even if you are sitting, as we are sitting here, our phones, our mobile phones are already sharing data with all sorts of systems without us even knowing it. Yeah, so I don't think we should be concerned about that so much, as long as it helps us. The moment we can see that something is disturbing us, or it's a hazard to us, then we can do something about it. There are tools that can enable us to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
But that shouldn't,
yeah.
be our overriding fear.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Gurpardeep, some participants are asking if they you could share the slides with them. Will that be possible?
Sure, no problems.
Yeah,
I'll
okay.
share it with the BIMBING, and then
yes,
I don't know, you can find a way to pass it on. No problems. Yeah.
Okay, so BIMBING representatives will email to participants the slides. I think we have space for one final question. Are these disruptive spaces functional for the long term? We are seeing all forms of disruptive tech being bought up by big tech and integrated into tech they once disrupted. WhatsApp, Oculus VR, and Instagram being bought out by Facebook is a good example of a big tech company simply buying out and the disruptive tech competition. What is the solution of this issue?
Oh, wow. What a loaded question. I think that's the nature of these big tech companies. I mean, you talk about Facebook, Alphabet, Apple, and Amazon in particular, I mean, as the bigger they are, the more the greater resources they have to buy up all these small technologies. I think it's very, to me, I look at it always positively. If there's a larger organization that's able to take a very nice piece of tech and integrate them within their platform so that it benefits mankind, not an issue. Yeah, obviously we have privacy issues to worry about, we have security issues to worry about, but I think we shouldn't be, I mean, look, it's the way of the future. I don't think we can run away from it. All right, it is going to be, you cannot hide from it anymore. Yeah, so I wouldn't worry too much about it, but embrace it, and maybe be part of that. Maybe in the future, think of an idea that you can actually come up with that will eventually, that you can eventually sell to these big tech companies for billions of ringgit, and you can become the next unicorn, that creates this ideas and puts it out there, commercially. Yeah, so look at it positively, I guess.
Yeah? Okay, I think there's another question here. We have seen Google developing AI to the point that they can learn and defeat the best GO players in the world. An experiment once thought to be impossible. What lies in the immediate future for AI? What short-term solution will it provide that we currently deem impossible for AI to solve or take over?
Oh dear. I think that needs a 3 or 4 hour lecture. The point is, it's going to be, it's everywhere. It is everywhere. I think healthcare is where the greatest application now is going to be seen for AI. That, in my opinion, is where we've got to look at now. If we have got an interest in that area, we have got an interest in getting involved in the healthcare industry. I would strongly suggest that we study in the healthcare industry, study medicine or allied health science, but ensure that we can identify how AI can play a role in enhancing the way we diagnose issues and the way we treat them. Yeah, because that's where I think the biggest growth is going to be. Yeah, but it's going to cut across all sectors. So I think the point is, I know it's a very long question, but that's a very short answer as much as I can provide. I know that there are always concerns, because sometimes even when I'm sitting at home and I just have a conversation with somebody about some topic, and lo and behold, the next thing I know, on my Google, the next search I have, I find an ad that relates to what I spoke about. So there's always paranoia about devices listening, and people cover their the webcams to ensure that people are watching, and that's a I mean, it's real in some senses, but then we've got to make sure that we have the tools and safeguards within our devices to protect ourselves. I mean, that's the reality of the world of the future. I mean, look, it goes back to the same thing. We always lock our doors right in the front, our front doors, and we lock our gate, and we put all sorts of cameras and CCTVs and all that to secure us, and that's good. In the future, it's going to be about securing our technology. Same thing, we've got to invest in securing it. Yeah, so no choice.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Gurpardeep Singh.